We are at Vernon Hills High School on a beautiful September evening, and there's something very special going on here today. We are with the American Legion Post 1247. We're with Commander Todd Renahan. We're with Post Adjutant, am I saying that correctly? Adjutant Craig Warner, and they're here to talk about a project that is really quite spectacular and quite special for our town. Commander Renahan, can you tell us what we're standing in front of right now?
We're standing in front of the historical marker. The state of Illinois has indicated that this is, in fact, a historical site. Back in 1942, World War II pilots trained here to prepare themselves for World War II and protect this country.
And how do you go about getting a historical marker? I mean, that seems like kind of a special thing.
Well, you have to sell it to the Post, which we did sometime around the first of the year. And I'd had some experience in having these in, and I suggested that these are really nice, and it's a great thing for the community, and it's well received. And we were asked by our national authority, since we're observing the 100th anniversary of the founding of the American Legion, they asked each post to do a project. So this is our project, So
this is a great project. So then, and you said you have experience. So because I understand, just as a little aside, you have a special title out of Kentucky from your work with history.
Well, I have a Daniel Boone relative or Daniel Boone type character in my family's history, and he's even more spectacular. And we put a historical marker down there. And because of the work my daughter and I did on researching the Kentucky history, we were both commissioned simultaneously as Kentucky colonels. So to my work friends and my close friends, I really should be referred to as the Honorable Craig Warner.
We'll have to keep that in mind. So we are among some very high-ranking individuals here tonight. That's good to know. Well, let's talk about not only is this project important, but it's here at the high school. So to me, I mean, this was the site, but this placement is kind of spectacular because it's right as you come over from the high school. To me, that speaks volumes to what you're trying to do here.
Absolutely, that was the most important part. Is that we could put where the runways were. We could put this marker at the X, but it wouldn't be in plain sight. So we want to make sure that not just the students that saw this to realize that they are at a bigger place than they might have ever imagined, but also their parents to have some reflection that maybe their grandparents were in World War II or they had a relative that was involved, so that everybody, whether you're a home team, the parents, the students, or the visitors, would be able to see this marker.
Very visible. Everybody should come over and take a look, come over and read it. And when we talk, too, about the American Legion and what you all have done for our nation, we salute you, we thank you, and you have room for more people, more veterans out there.
Yeah, so if you're a veteran and not a member of our American Legion Post, we cordially order you to get over here and join, so you can be a part of things like this. Yeah.
And when we talk about you meet every once in a while, or what happens?
We meet about every other month. We meet at the Countryside Fire Station. There's about 15 of us that get together. As you can see, I'm probably one of the younger soldiers in the post, but we get together every other month. We get involved with the 4th of July parade. We carry the flag, so if you can walk a mile and a half, you can join our Legion. And then at the same time, we do the Memorial Day ceremonies. We have 3 different cemeteries that we attend to, carry the flag for that, render salutes. And then we also have the bingo tent at Vernon Hills Village Days in the summer as well.
You guys are kind of just always around town. You guys are the guys that are everywhere if there's something going on in town.
Well, we like to get involved. We grew quite a bit this year, so I think we're going to get more involved in other things. So,
and if somebody wants to find out more, how do they find out about you guys and what they can do?
Best way would be to call me directly. My cell phone is area code 224-420-0163. That's 224-420-0163.
Okay, so anybody out there, this is an important group, and it's a group where you have a lot of great camaraderie. You do a lot for our community. Thank you for that. Thank you for your service, and thank you for this really special marker. Thanks for letting us be a part of that.
I wanted to add one other comment that Todd's daughter is graduated this year from Vernon Hills High School, and she was 17 when she enlisted, and she just passed basic training. So there's a private Renahan out there that someday will be a member of our Legion Post. So
Well, just you grow 'em where you got to grow 'em, I guess.
That's right. Do what you got to do for the team.
Well, thank you all. We appreciate what you're doing here. And remember, if you want to find out more, find out about what's going on here, because this is a really important group. Thank you for all you do around town. Thank you for all you've done for your service. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. My name is Todd Renahan. I'm the post commander of American Legion Post 1247. We thank you for attending this historic event tonight. The National American Legion turns 100 years old next year. They've asked all the chapters across the country to honor that event appropriately. In the national bylaws, Article 3 states that we should preserve the memories of the incidents of the 2 world wars and other great hostilities that have upheld democracy. Tonight we'll honor that commitment. First, let me thank the following. From District 128, Pat Grudy, Board President; Prentiss Lee, Superintendent; John Gilliam, Principal; Gerald O'Connor. From the Village of Vernon Hills, Roger Byrne, the Village President, and his wife Kathy for her tireless proofreading. Mark Fleischauer, Village Manager; Dave Brown and crew for their installation crew; Will Rockwell for creating the maps; the State Historical Society, Dave Webster, Executive Director; Mary Lou Johnsrud, Office Manager. We'd also like to thank, who's also in attendance, Captain Ray Leung from the Great Lakes Naval Station, as well as Andrew Tangent, Superintendent of Veterans Assistance Commission of Lake County. I think that's everybody. I'd like to ask Chaplain Thompson to come up for the benediction.
As you're able to, please pray with me. Eternal Creator of all people, we gather on this day to pay tribute to those who raised their hand and accepted the call to service. Service to you, service to their country. We remember those who made the supreme sacrifice of life itself for the preservation of freedom of our beloved nation, for their devotion to duty, for their willingness to accept the responsibility of a solemn and sacred mission. This ceremony is an ever-present reminder that freedom is not free. The cost is paid for with the sacrifice and sometimes the very lives of those who have gathered to protect the dreams and freedoms of this nation, especially in this city. For this is exactly what we honor and remember today. We remember and we give thanks for the honor, courage, and commitment of all those who have in times past and who continue to pledge that we will defend this nation against all enemies, foreign and domestic. We remember and we give thanks. May we as citizens of this nation stand firm to keep the peace that others have given their lives to win. We continue to ask you to be with those serving today in harm's way, encourage their families, and strengthen them as only you can. For we pray these things in your name. Amen.
Thank you, Chaplain. I'd like to ask Mayor Roger Byrne to say a few words.
Good evening. I have to be brief or I'll spin off on the whole history of this site and how it wound up in Vernon Hills. So trying to be as quick as I can to get the Manatee Hour up here. I'd like to thank Todd Renahan. He's the commander. John Taylor, he's the senior, vice commander? Okay. And unfortunately, I just was advised John's in the hospital today. So, and he came on Tuesday night to the village board meeting and did a great presentation telling us, what was the sign's all about and making sure everybody was invited to come here to honor the soldiers that trained here during World War II. I'd also like to thank my next door neighbor, Craig Warner. Craig is right there. Craig's wearing his sunglasses. Craig worked tirelessly on this project, and he did a great job. And as he said, the proof reader was my wife, Kathy. But they spent some quality time together in the backyard. So, congratulations, guys. This is a great project for the village. Thank you very much.
Next, Dave Webster from the Illinois Historical Society.
Thanks very much. Markers such as the one we're about to see exist all over our state. They are placed under the guidance of the Illinois State Historical Society, the nonprofit, non-governmental organization that I have the honor to represent here today. Our website, which is basically historyillinois.org, describes all 500 of these markers, and they are fascinating. You may not know that one of them, located less than 5 miles from where we're standing, marks the site of the largest train robbery in American history. That's right here in Lake County, and it's true. There's a verse from our Illinois State song that claims that without what it describes as Illinois' wondrous story, the glory of the United States cannot be written. You'll have direct proof of that in just a moment. For in a very real sense, we are standing on hallowed historical ground. Please know that the Society's markers all over Illinois are sponsored not by the state government or by travel guides to tell us what they think is historically meaningful. Instead, they're sponsored by local groups, such as today's sponsors, American Legion Post 1247. And they emphasize that meaningful historic events can and do often take place in our own backyards. And that's really my point. History is not just something handed down to us by experts. History is what each of us, by looking around, can find, cherish, and, as today so beautifully demonstrates, preserve and perpetuate. I hope that all of us will seek out and cherish the history that resides in our own community, sometimes even literally just beneath our feet. Feel free to see me afterward for information about the State Historical Society. And now how about some great history tonight being made by the Cougars. Thank you very much.
And representing District 128, Superintendent Prentiss.
Well, thank you, Todd. Good evening. My name is Prentiss, and I'm the superintendent at Community High School District 128. On behalf of the District 128 Board of Education, administration and staff, and parents and students, welcome to Vernon Hills High School's Military Appreciation Night, and more specifically to the dedication of this significant historical marker, recognizing the amazing role that the current VHHS property played in training thousands of United States Navy pilots during World War II. Among district and VHHS leaders participating in the ceremony this evening are District 128 Board President Pat Grudy. Pat, would you raise your hand? Pat's standing back here. And, of course, VHHS Principal Dr. John Gilliam, and John is right over here. Let's give them a round of applause. We are honored and most proud to host and house this special and forever recognition, which not only recognizes the important role that this property played in ensuring that the United States had the best aircraft carrier-based combat pilots in the world during World War II, but it is also a greater recognition of the many sacrifices that so many young men, young women, and their families made to ensure and protect the freedom that we have today. We will never take those sacrifices for granted, and we offer our humble and special thanks to our military veterans and those who currently serve this great nation. And finally, a very special thanks and appreciation to Craig Warner for his stellar work and efforts in making this happen, and to everyone else who played a part in ensuring that this important piece of history is never forgotten. We're proud to be a partner in this process. Thank you.
The true leader of tonight's event, Craig Warner.
I'm just the idea guy, not the nuts and bolts. So I'd like to read something that was written on September 13th, 1814, 200 years ago, almost to the day, and it's kind of appropriate to what we're honoring tonight. "Oh, thus be it ere when free men shall stand between their loved homes and war's desolation. Blessed with victory and peace, may the heavens rescued land praise the power that hath made and preserved us a nation. Then conquer we must when our cause it is just, and this be our motto, and God is our trust. And the star-spangled banner in triumph shall wave, o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave. Free men standing between their loved homes and war's desolation. If I had to pick a one-liner that described the history of the United States, I would pick that. And of course, I know you all know that is the fourth verse of the Star-Spangled Banner. So, if not, Google it. Yeah, so. There has been more than one occasion when our nation battled back from overwhelming odds and prevailed. Tonight, we are briefly going to recount one of those stories that happened here on this athletic field. You are about to hear a unique story of the history of World War II that took place right where we stand. And as you look around today, you'd never believe what I'm about to tell you took place. Tonight, we're here to see a football game. Two high schools are here to put their pride and joy on the gridiron, and all the fans here are gonna cheer as their sons play the greatest of all sports, football. And like Al Bundy, I played high school football, so I've got a real prejudice on this one. You know? So, 76 years ago, the scenery here was completely different. Instead of footballs flying through the air, you could watch countless Avengers, Corsairs, Wildcats, and Hellcats, and other naval combat aircraft, which filled the skies, literally. Where our football field now stands, young Americans trained for war. It all started in earnest in December 7th, 1941, and I'd like to quote how President Roosevelt described it. "Yesterday, December 7th, a day that will live in infamy, the United States was suddenly and deliberately attacked by the naval air forces of the Empire of Japan." And he went on to say, "I ask Congress to declare that since the unprovoked and dastardly attack by Japan on December 7th, 1941, a state of war has existed between the United States and the Japanese Empire. Peacetime to war, one day." Prior to the attack, our naval strategists put the battleship as our primary naval offensive weapon. The aircraft carrier was a new weapon system, and its role was yet to be determined. That philosophy changed in a heartbeat. After the successful attack on Pearl Harbor, our naval strategists came to the realization that the aircraft carrier was now our main naval weapon, and we were fortunate that on that day, all our aircraft carriers were out at sea, but all our battleships laid on the bottom of Pearl Harbor. In the wake of being at war, our Navy soon realized that we faced a resourceful enemy, one with better strategy, better ships, better planes, and combat experienced pilots. We were lacking in all categories, but not for long. Now our story begins. If you had to pick a spot in the United States to tell a story about where a massive naval aviator training program took place, I think Vernon Hills would be the last place I'd come up with, but it happened. Would you pick Vernon Hills? Well, that's exactly what the Navy did. And the Navy was lucky in that the year prior to Pearl Harbor, a man stationed here in the Midwest, Captain Francis Whitehead, envisioned our training needs in the event of war. He drew up plans to start aircraft carrier qualification training on Lake Michigan. He knew that if we used fleet carriers on the ocean for training, enemy submarines could attack them. This would constrain the number of pilots and the time needed to train them. No such threat existed in Lake Michigan. Therefore, using Lake Michigan enabled the Navy to train many more pilots, train them quickly and without the risk of enemy interference. So right here at Rust-Oleum Field stood a Navy airfield whose mission was to prepare pilots to land on carriers. And if you look at the pictures down here, you can see where the runways were in relation to the airfield. And also, and I'll tell you later, that earlier photo, you can actually see where the aircraft carrier landing outlines were drawn on the runway. The little stuff these guys had to land in. I don't know how they did it. Mind you, the carriers in Lake Michigan were only 500 feet long, and their landing areas were even smaller. It should be apparent that before attempting to land on a moving ship that's pitching, a pilot should be very well schooled on the procedures of landing and taking off on an aircraft. So work began quickly. First, the training program was needed at headquarters, so they picked Naval Air Station Glenview, 9 miles south of here. Here, planes could be stored, students housed, administration be set up, and ground school training could be accomplished. Secondly, we needed aircraft carriers. Aircraft carriers in Lake Michigan. It took me a while to really understand that one. And that was a very unique idea, but in the heyday of steam-powered passenger ships on the Great Lakes, 5-star passenger ships hauled passengers from one port to the other in extreme luxury. But by the time World War II came along, their financial heyday was at an end, and their owners were only too happy to sell their old ships to the Navy. So the two ships that were purchased were the CNB and the New Buffalo. And then they were rechristened as the USS Wolverine and the USS Sable. It was estimated it would take 6 months to reconfigure each ship, but the shipyards worked 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, did it in half the time. So in August 1942, 9 months after Pearl Harbor, the first Navy plane to land on a side-wheel-powered steamship in Lake Michigan occurred. And 1 month later in September, the first pilot in this training program was certified. From then on, the program grew and grew. The war did not allow the luxury of time. Pilots were needed now. So this is how the training program went. Day one, training for first of all, a student would report to Naval Air Station Glenview. There they would receive ground school training and be briefed on what to experience in the program. After ground school was completed, the next day the pilots were already qualified in their combat aircraft. They would fly to a bounce field, and our field here is referred to a bounce field. Originally there were 3 of them, O'Hare, one in Elgin and here, but they needed a dedicated airfield, so this became the main airfield, and the other ones were not used. The third day was the actual landing on the aircraft carriers. So they would take off from Glenview. If you're familiar with the shoreline of Wilmette, there's a place there called the Baha'i Temple, very easy to see. Planes would enter a visual holding pattern or the Baha'i Temple and wait for clearance to come out and land on one of the 2 ships. Training was quick and to the point. Immediately upon graduation, the pilots would leave Glenview and report to their duty assignment. This training program was highly successful. It trained 17,820 pilots. One of those graduates was a future president of the United States, George H.W. Bush, and at the time he was the youngest pilot in the Navy at the ripe old age of 18. Any 18-year-olds out in the band? 17-year-olds? All right, well, just think of what these guys had to go through. So, a pivotal advantage over the Axis powers was due in large part to the pilot training that was accomplished on this site. At the beginning of the war, we had 7 carriers. By the end of the war, we'd built 99. Our formidable enemies were overwhelmed, and they were unable to cope with their combat losses and the quantity and quality of our fighting forces. So our story here tonight is more than just about a successful training program. It's a continuing story of how Americans have always fought for our freedom and the freedom of others, and how we will continue to do so. Veterans since the beginning of our country and those who serve today considered it a duty, a privilege, and an honor to serve our country. And those are very meaningful words to all of us. The words of President Kennedy sum it up when he said, "Ask not what your country can do for you, but ask what you can do for your country." And at this time, I have to say, as a conservative Republican, I've quoted a Democratic president twice, so it can be tough to do. And if our country were once again threatened and our existence held in the balance, I would ask our enemies to study the fate of others who stood between free men and, in today, women in their loved homes and war's desolation. Post 1247 hopes you enjoy this gift to the community. We hope that you read the sign and you will have increased pride in your village's history. We hope you are inspired by those that trained here and later fought for our country. And we hope that this marker will be a constant reminder, especially to you students, who will soon take their place as citizens of this great nation. Let this historical marker remind you of the sacrifices of the past and the great things we expect of you in the future. American Legion 1247 thanks you for coming here tonight, and I think the speech making is over with, and it's time to see this marker. So.
Are we ready? Let's see this marker, gentlemen. you. Before I close this out, I'd like to thank all the other veterans that are here in attendance as well. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Today we post a historical marker to show those that pass what young men did in 1942 during World War II. We hope that you will always remember them and their sacrifices for this great nation. Thank you for attending, and may God bless America. Thank you.
Well, when it comes to what we're doing over here at Vernon Hills High School, this marker, this community, this history, it's really overwhelming, and it is a partnership. The Legion came up with this idea, but what a partnership with the high school, and what a journey this has been. We are with Prentiss, the superintendent of District 128, as well as the founding principal of Vernon Hills High School. You all have seen a lot happen in these years.
Yes. It actually was a wonderful project, and the cooperation with the village and the high school was unbelievable. I'd spent 1 year before the school was built working on all the plans and putting everything together, and this was one project. We had on the site, we had an 18-acre site for a school, but we needed an athletic field. And when all this was worked out, Congressman Porter had worked out all kinds of things to move the VORTAC. Congressman Kirk followed up with that. And then as a district, we were under an obligation to the Army to do some development and planning on this field over the next 30 years. Well, this is beyond our wildest dreams. The first iteration of the football field was literally pouring some grass seed over an old concrete field and making it a football field and calling that our field. And I said, no, we'll put all our money into the high school. We'll have the best classrooms we can possibly have, and then we'll come up with the money as we go along to build the wonderful stadium. And I had a wonderful athletic director, Al Janulis, and Al really literally demanded that the track be called what's called a broken back track. So this is one of the only broken back tracks in Illinois. And it means that the curves are not really tight around the football field, but it's large enough that you could put a full-size soccer field inside of it. And also when you run the races, you don't have to make a real sharp turn on the run. But as a Nike site, let's go back to the real purpose of this. I'm really proud of what we were able to do with the Army and the Navy at that time, and architects from all the different architect companies and engineers who really put a great effort in putting this through. The road to the west, working with Stevenson, working with District 102, I think it was, or 103, working with them to make sure that everything came together. And we spent hours planning and putting it together and making sure that it would all work. But to honor the military people who really put in the effort preceding everything that we did is really an enormous credit to them and an honor for the district, from my perspective, to say that this is a wonderful thing that we were able to do. And tonight's presentation was just terrific.
It is definitely hallowed ground, I would say.
Oh, yeah. Well, and I think when I came to the district 14 years ago, one of the first people I met was Jim, who had just retired at Vernon Hills, and Jim was doing some project work for the district. And I love history, and I knew Jim was the man who did a lot of this back work, and so he spent a lot of time letting me know the history of this site. It was just fascinating and amazing, really, when you see what's out here now and the cooperation between the school district, the local government, state government, and federal government, and you think what it took to make all that happen. When you think about the world today and cooperation, is beyond amazing. We are so honored and proud to be a part of this, a part of the historical marker, a part of hosting our veterans tonight at the football game, for the sacrifices that they all made. And there are many of those stories across the country of sacrifices that communities made, and young people and their parents on behalf of this country. And in our area, of course, this is a significant story that impacted the whole country. 17,000 pilots, Craig Warner talked about tonight, were trained in this area. That's astounding. So for John Gilliam, the principal of Vernon Hills now, and myself, this is just such an honor to work with Craig on this project, and for the school and the school board to support it. And we're just so happy to be a part of hosting this historical marker here and continuing to tell those stories so they're not forgotten by our current generation and future generations to come, that people actually see this when they're out on the athletic field at events and ask questions and read it and then ask questions about, wow, what's the story behind this? It's absolutely amazing.
It's astounding.
Oh, it is. It's unbelievable. And you really can't underplay the effort that Craig Warner put into this. He started on this when I was still principal. Oh, he was about everything about really recognizing military and everything that was really involved in this whole project. And it handed to him to be that persistent to stay with us to this point. And I think he's done a wonderful job. And this is a great marker. This is terrific.
So it's the history continues, the American ingenuity story continues, and working together continues. Thank you.
Cooperation was great. Cooperation was unbelievable between the village, the school, everybody. And, like I said, Congress, everybody. Even Senator Link was also involved in this, too. He came up with some money, and then we had CDW, and we had Rust-Oleum, obviously. So we had a lot of people that really came together to make this happen for the high school and the whole community in District 128. This is a wonderful thing. This is a gem.
It's just really important for the current generation and generations to come that they know the story behind what was here before this beautiful athletic complex, because it is truly an astounding story.
It is an astounding story. Thank you for all you do. Thank you for all you've done. And let's have more great history to come for more stories from here. Thank you.